It seems to me that Jeremiah's life was mapped out even before he was born. Now, that's not too unusual, certainly with it, if you go back a couple of centuries in our society. Do we have any landed gentry here this morning? Does owning a grave plot count as landed gentry? Because I own 2 of them. No, it doesn't really, no. The landed gentry, and this I think only counted for their sons, so apologies for the ladies in the congregation, but the firstborn, before they were born, would inherit the whole estate, and they'd become the estate managers, wouldn't they? The secondborn would normally they'd go into the army, wouldn't they? Yes. The secondborn would usually go into the army. They would be a commissioned officer, so they wouldn't bother with going through the ranks. They'd go straight into being an officer. And the third-born son would be a vicar, that's right. And the fourth-born son would probably go off the rails because he had no destiny as such. So I've got a little bit of a test for you this morning, which is, we've heard a little bit from Jeremiah's first chapter. Does anybody know what Jeremiah was famous for? What were his famous prophecies? And don't be embarrassed, because I have to admit I couldn't remember this even after I wrote it. They come in 3 packets. The first was the Babylonian conquest, and he predicted that the Babylonian Empire would conquer Jerusalem and lead his people into exile. It became true. He also prophesied the deterioration of the society. He prophesied that there would be further destruction through famine, plague, and the loss of land and property, and that came true too. But he also prophesied the return from exile. He prophesied that the remnant of the Jewish people would return to their lands and they would rebuild Jerusalem. We don't hear much about prophets today. That's with a PH in the middle. We hear a lot about the other sort. And a prophet is someone, at least in a religious sense, who speaks God's word or God's instruction to keep their people safe and to guide them in their faith. Has anybody ever made a prophecy? And I don't mean whether Chelsea are going to win the cup. Nobody's owning up. I will own up to a prophecy, and this is as close as I got to a religious prophecy. This was in 2020, I remember it well, on the 16th of March. I was at a meeting in Manchester with our 3 resource centres for learning. We were getting together. And I was trying to encourage them to become more efficient and more effective and to merge, was my view, as the only way for them to survive. My prophecy was, I said, within 5 years, if we, and I was the convener of the Education Learning Committee, and there with the 3 principals of the 3 colleges, and I said, we, and I included myself in that, if we do not find a way to make this education and learning, particularly for new ministers, if we do not find a way of making it more efficient and more effective, then the church will step in and do it for us. The church being Assembly. Assembly in November last year decided to stop using one of the 3 resource centres for learning. It was a prophecy that came true. It's not a prophecy that, in a sense, I felt a little bit like Jeremiah, because it was you've heard the saying, a prophet of doom, which is in a sense what I was. I felt a little bit like Jeremiah, because actually, frankly, the principals didn't listen, and we are in the condition that we're in today. And I feel a little bit like Jeremiah also, that I know it will be sorted, but it won't be sorted in the way that it could have been done before. So prophets do exist, and in some ways, maybe they are always prophets of doom, I don't know, but there is the corollary of what I was saying was, if we do this, this will make the education and learning solution in our church even better than it is today. And I think that's part of what Jeremiah was saying. I would just ask you all, because the story hasn't finished, to pray for those responsible for the development and training of ordinands in our church, because we are going through quite a traumatic period.